that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
All right, social media, welcome. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Welcome to our Tuesday Live at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where Brenda enjoys bringing me angst to address complex topics like today's. I'm looking at this and I've been thinking a lot about what I'm going to say. Boundaries after a breakup. How much contact is too much? Wow, Brenda. So thank you for bringing all kinds of anxiety into my afternoon as I contemplate the jumpstart lens through which we look at this. But I enjoy the complex topics, and I hope that these lives on Tuesdays, which apply to everyday life circumstances, are found to be helpful. I have some experience doing this in a number of relationships and a number of contexts, and I'll try to share, as I have aged, some things I've come to understand along the way that seems to have come with age. It's very unusual for romantic partnerships, intimate relationships to routinely be lifelong. The data does not seem to reveal this. Our divorce rates continue to be high. Our practices socially in how we engage romantically and intimately suggest that people are in constant pursuit of emotionally arousing experiences and people. I'll be the first one to admit my own naivete about the world of polyamory. I find it wrought with challenges that I witness in friends who live that kind of life. And it's not unusual in my dialogue with friends from that world, as well as friends who have more conventional relationships, romantically, intimately, or in terms of their family or network or group of close friends. This topic, I've had some prototypical experiences up to and including the need to set some boundaries around people within my own family. I think there's a fear associated with talking about that because, conventionally our concern about what that looks like stems from a desire to not be judged because we have to set a boundary with a family member along these lines. But believe it or not, I had a conversation today with someone who called me with a very personal situation, who had a need to construct a boundary around a familial relationship. So what are some things that I was thinking about that I wanted to share? First, my father used to call it the misery quotient. If we're asking the question, how much contact is too much after a boundary? To what degree is misery present in your life through the ongoing contact? Would the misery reduce with less frequent contact? Would the misery not be reduced by less frequent contact? What's important to you? The misery quotient was just a heading that my dad used to give the analysis or self-appraisal of your serenity or emotional state. What's your misery quotient right now? Well, right now it's pretty high, Dad. This is I got to go because I'm looking at the camera. This is a caricature of my dad. You know what? Let me just quickly show this. So my dad was a world-class musician and world-class musical teacher. And one of his students made this for him. It says, "I, madam, I am the great granddaddy of all musicians." And Maestro Prisco is down at the bottom. I miss my dad. He gave me a lot of great tools, like the misery quotient. I don't know where he got that from, but I just think it's funny. Anyway, that is a reasonable question to ask oneself when maintaining contact with someone that we've had to erect some boundaries with. And if boundaries are routinely assailed, or if the boundaries are not resulting in someone's adequate respect of them, it would seem reasonable that the boundary needs to be supported, and this may require messaging and less contact. How much contact is too much contact? If you've placed a boundary and the boundary is not working at all. Let's say you put up a boundary and, within a short period of time, the person with whom you set it is now probing the fence to see how soft it is. Can they get across it or get across it? If that is occurring, it's not a boundary anymore. A boundary is something that is upheld by two people, but it is enforced by one, generally speaking. And in my experience, I've had to set up boundaries within my own family where, upon setting the boundary, there was some fence probing, there was some prompting on my part, and then there was a back off. And then I can decide whether or not to relax the boundary, and I have done so. And then upon relaxing the boundary in the service of trying to acquire maybe deeper relationship with this family member, I quickly remembered why I set the boundary in the first place, and I have to set it again. One of my mentors, the great CEO Ron Adler, told me, "Andy, as a supervisor and a manager, prepare yourself to say the same thing to people thousands of times." So that gave me great perspective on the idea that setting it once and communicating it once will never be sufficient. This is not a set it and forget it phenomena. This is a relationship. And very often we have to put boundaries in place in relationships and maintain some kind of contact with those people. What kind of situations would those include? Divorced parents who have a responsibility to engage one another about shared children. Business partners who are attending to the needs of a business as they engage in negotiation and separation. You can think, I'm sure, of a host of other occurrences of that. But there are times where we have to remain in some kind of contact after a boundary has been constructed. There are other relationships in which, when we construct a boundary, it's best for everyone if it's maintained. If someone has egregiously engaged in behavior with you necessitating a very strict boundary of no contact, I would encourage you to absolutely please. Yes, Michael, thank you for that. They even need to be set for current relationships. Agreed. This is a skill that is acquired in time. Michael, I have to tell you, by the way, how grateful I am for your generosity of spirit with the pipes and the tobacco. I'm already doing pipe chat with my son-in-law, which is a tradition my father and I used to do, where we would just sit around and chat about deep things while smoking our pipes. And you have equipped that experience so beautifully. Thank you. Michael's a good friend of ours, mine, and did a real generous thing for me recently. So this is an acquired skill. Relationships require maintenance. Not everyone has the skill to do that. And I have felt, as I have aged, less willing to credit someone's behavior for my suffering and more willing to credit this skill set in relationship to my suffering. I have to accept that relationships where I would never want any boundary and I would want emotional nurturing and closeness to occur, and these are particularly challenging, may need a boundary set in them. In the prevention of negative outcomes. What could those possibly be? Well, friendships across gender for some people might not be manageable. This is a common theme that's discussed in a lot of worship and church settings where husbands have to be very cautious about attending to the emotional security and needs of their own spouse in their interactions with other women, biological females. And in as much as they feel as though they can completely comport with appropriate behavior, they're witnessing the suffering that it may be bringing into someone else's life. And I have to think about, what's my misery quotient? Do I want to jam my spouse into adjusting her sense of the world, or do I want to honor her discomfort and abide by her preferences? This is the person I've committed my life to. That's one example context. Another example context could be in your own family, and I've experienced one of those as well. In particular, I had a family member who lived their life in a way where I'm witnessing a degree of irresponsibility and carelessness, and this person would routinely come to me for money and for help. And I found myself falling into a pattern because of who they were to me that I felt like I had no choice but to honor the request because the image of denying the request was so unpalatable. I tried to set a boundary around that topic specifically. Look, when you have need like this and you come to me, what I'm recognizing is that I'm not managing this well. So I need to erect a boundary. This particular area of need for you is something that I can't address anymore. And as if I didn't say anything, the need would come up the following week and I would be presented with it. So now the boundary I set is not working. So I'm having contact with this person. This is going on and my boundary didn't work. So I would prompt to the boundary. A few days later, this would happen again. Yes, agreed. Great comments here. The boundary would happen again, the boundary violation. I would feel uncomfortable as a result. I would feel like my boundary was not a priority. My well-being was not a priority to this person. Their need was the priority for them. So I had to move the boundary. And then when that failed to work, I moved the boundary to a place where it couldn't be penetrated anymore. I had to set a very significant boundary with this person. And it's unfortunate. It's sad. It's not what I wanted. But what's my misery quotient? I set a boundary and they continue to violate it. Whose fault is this? Is it my fault for allowing this to occur? If I continue to let it occur, it's got nothing to do with the other person's behavior. It's got everything to do with my ability to set boundaries and accept suffering. Accept this is not what I want. I don't want this image, but I also don't want the discomfort of routinely feeling dismissed and disrespected. And this person obviously has a sense of need that goes beyond any regard for me. So I guess I have to move the boundary. I've had to do boundaries like this in professional relationships where the distinction between the personal and the professional was making things convoluted. And then I also learned about some patterns that I got into that set the stage for that to happen. The kind of person who would do that with me, routinely try to violate that boundary. Sometimes we don't even know they're being crossed yet. We have an intuition, though. Instincts, intuition, and intelligence, as the great Tony Blauer says. And when I'm feeling uncomfortable as a result of someone not engaging in a request that I have asked of them that I thought was important to me, I can trust more than likely that a boundary that I have set has been violated. And as a result, it seems like the boundary needs to be moved. So the question, how much contact is too much, is a question that's used as an ongoing measurement in relationship to the effect or efficacy of the boundary. What kind of boundaries do you have in your relationships right now? Do you have relationships where you frequently talk in a negative appraisal about the person, but they don't know that? Like, that's one thing I feel reasonably proud of in my life. And I learned that from people you wouldn't expect. Nearly every person in my life knows where I stand with them. I don't have a person in my life that I speak about in a derogatory or negative way that I have not already let them know precisely how I feel about them. This can make one unpopular, this skill. This idea that, Andy, you're going to really let someone know how you feel about someone's behavior? Yes, but I'm not going to negatively appraise them. I'm going to let them know how I feel when their conduct is a particular way. I might follow in nonviolent communication what we would refer to as an OFNR. Observation. When you ask me for money, I feel terribly frustrated, almost enraged. I need to know that preferences of mine, like the boundary I sent recently, are important to you. That's the need. Request. Would you be willing to discontinue asking me for money? That might be an OFNR for someone who needs to be prompted about their ongoing boundary violation. And then if they continue to do so, move the boundary. It's a constant measurement tool. How much contact is too much? You're going to find out. And if your boundary isn't working, you can trust that contact is too much. Well, what's a boundary where it does work? Well, a relationship with this person, for example, where they're no longer asking me for money because I've set a boundary that I'm not going to do it. And I have certain feelings that are generated in me as a result of the request. And I'm letting them know that so they can make an adjustment in the service of the relationship. If they don't want to do that, or if they can't do that, I have to decide what side of the sandwich do I want to bite from. Do I want to bite from the sandwich of discomfort, not letting them know how I truly feel, while letting them violate the boundary routinely? Or do I want to be able to live with myself, set the boundary in the service of my needs, and then live with the discomfort that comes along with the sadness from that? Sometimes it's entirely reasonable to grieve a relationship because it's not what we had hoped it would become. And as I have aged, I have felt that with people I have felt extraordinarily close to, thinking that that could never change. And then I watch it change. And I try to accurately appraise what I did in the service of that, and to try desperately not to take responsibility for things I didn't do. I can't take responsibility for someone's behavior. I can only take responsibility for my own. I am very interested in aiming up and articulating not my truth, not moral relativism, the truth. I'm interested in getting into the bottom of that. And if people don't share that exploration, that's okay. I'm not going to judge them for that. It's always interesting to me to witness people who are frustrated and they negatively appraise someone else's behavior, but the other person has no idea that they feel this way. I don't even at that point think there's any value in spending time talking about the other person's behavior if it does not lead to a need to talk to you in front of me about the need for a boundary here. I think in an emotional intelligence context, as a species, we're raising awareness about this and we're getting better. Have you ever seen someone who's just terrific with it? I have. It's like once they set the boundary, they can totally live with themselves without any doubt or apprehension that was the right choice, and they're excellent at it. People who are apprehensive about doing it, very often, in my experience and observation, are people who have anxious attachment difficulty. They're very anxious in how they attach to people. So they're constantly engaging in self-doubt. Should I do this? Should I not? I can't believe they're making me even have to do this. That's very hard work for someone who's got some anxiety attachment issues. Someone with secure attachment, I think, generally speaking, can do this a little easier. So anyway, lovely conversation, this topic, boundaries after a breakup. How much contact is too much? A breakup doesn't always mean that we're not going to talk to people anymore. There are occasions where it is. What's the driving force behind accurately appraising how much contact is too much contact? What is your misery quotient? If in your misery, all you do is complain about the other person's behavior, you're not going to get real far in resolving the misery. The only way you're going to make some progress is by becoming willing to, as Tony Blauer would say, accept this is happening. It's unfortunate. Accept this is happening. I'm getting assaulted. Accept this is happening. Once you accept that it's happening, the decisions get a little easier to consider. So with that, I want to thank you so much for joining this live on Thursday in the Jumpstart Mastery Network. Our live is for professionals who are working in the space of social work, youth and family services, corrections, workplace violence prevention, psychiatric care and services, and we orient the topic for something in a professional context. But thank you so much. We've had, as a nation, a pretty tremendous 40 days, but it's great to know that the government's opening back up and people are going to get their needs met for employment, for assistance, for seeing their coworkers, for resuming some kind of professional life without fear of being able to survive and take care of themselves. I'm just glad that that's over. All the very best to you. Take good care.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Or that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.